Show, we're going to talk about me, Myers Corp Cosplay, and my time trying to be a professional wrestler. This is going to be weird. That and a whole lot more here on Monday Night Nerd. Hey everybody, welcome to Monday Night Nerd. My name is Myers Corp Cosplay. Thank you all for joining. I greatly appreciate it. Welcome. I hope you're having a great week. I'm having a great week so far. If you don't know and you're new here, my name is Myers Corp Cosplay. I've been a cosplayer for over 10 years. I've been going to conventions for over 10 years. I've been a nerd since birth, and I'm here to talk about nerdy things. And tonight, we're going to be talking about my time trying to be a professional wrestler. Yes, this skinny kid tried to train to be a professional wrestler, and we're going to talk all about that and a whole lot more. It's been a good week, folks. Let's jump into the news. We got a little bit of news, especially if you're a wrestling fan this weekend. This was a pretty big week, and this weekend was Survivor Series. WWE's annual fall pay-per-view was this Saturday, and it was amazing. This was one of the first pay-per-views that I have watched in a very long time. I had the WWE Network for a while, and then I let it go because the price was getting too much. Now I've got it back. I can just watch it occasionally with another program that we have. And I thought, you know what? I've heard so many good things might be happening at Survivor Series. I'm going to tune in, and man, was I not disappointed. This was one of the best pay-per-views I've seen in a while. We had so many good matchups, from Rhea Ripley defending her WWE Women's Championship was amazing. The War Games matches, the female War Games matches, the male War Game matches were amazing. We had the big return of R-Truth. R-Truth is back at the WWE. It was really cool to see him. The returning Randy Orton, the Viper, was amazing, making his return to the War Games match to help Cody Rhodes and his team beat the Judgment Day. And as the pay-per-view was going off, like Mussolini and Survivor Series, CM Punk is back in the WWE, and I can't say that I did not have the biggest smile on my face. I am a huge CM Punk fan. I know he has his haters. I know he has his detractors because of everything he stands for and his opinions on a lot of things. But personally, growing up straight edge, that means a lot, having somebody like that in the WWE pushing I shouldn't say pushing, but living that life and showing that you can be a professional wrestler in that world and having that type of lifestyle was really cool. And it's great to see him back. I've been watching a little bit of stuff when I got home tonight about, what this means for AEW, seeing as he was just let go from AEW. Is this the final nail in their coffin? I don't think so. I think it's definitely going to hurt them in the ratings. I think when it came to last week, when they went head-to-head with WWE, it was like a 10-1 when it came to audience. So I think it's definitely going to hurt them now that all these eyes that were looking at CM Punk on AEW are now going to be tuning into WWE, especially right now is when Raw is happening, and I believe he's going to be on there. So if you're not watching this and you're watching Raw, I completely understand. But it was an overall great show. I'm really excited to see where they're going to go. Next month, they've got Elimination Chamber, I believe. And then after that, the Royal Rumble is back. And I used to have everybody come over to my place and watch the pay-per-views. And I've not been able to do that since COVID. I kind of took a break when COVID happened, and I've kind of dropped out of WWE for a while. But with all the excitement that's going on, this Royal Rumble coming out January 27th, I'm going to have people back in my house. We're going to have a big Royal Rumble party. I'm super excited for that because the Royal Rumble is never a bad pay-per-view. It's always an amazing show. So I hope everybody can come out to that. And yeah, it's going to be a blast. Let's talk about some more news. I did something this week, which I don't know if I'm going to regret yet. It's too early, but I have an inkling I'm going to regret it. See, as you well know, if you've watched this show, I'm not a TV guy. There are so many series over the past 10, 20 years that I have not watched. I've not watched Game of Thrones. I've not watched Walking Dead. I've not watched Breaking Bad. I've not watched so many shows because I'm not a TV guy. I don't have the energy or the time or the patience to sit down every hour and watch an hour of TV. I will watch the Marvel shows, but they come out once a week, and I'm perfectly fine waiting once a week for an episode. However, there's a series back in the 90s and the 2000s that I've heard so much about back then, even now, and especially now because a lot of these guys are at conventions that I go to. I started watching Smallville, and of all the shows, the 10 seasons and like 20 episodes a season and an hour long each, I know I've set myself up for a long process, but I did start watching Smallville, and I gotta admit, I'm 2 episodes in, and I'm actually it's a good show. I will fully admit I'm not the biggest Superman fan. I do appreciate the Man of Steel, but I like it. It's really fun now being so far removed from when the show happened. And again, seeing these people on at conventions and seeing them now, seeing them back then, it's so adorable because every time I see them, I just keep getting that audio from the meme of it's just a baby. Michael Rosenbaum, he's such a baby in this show. But it was honestly a good couple episodes. The special effects are very 90s, 2000s. So, I'm never gonna fault them for that because that was the times. Tara in chat saying this is why I've not watched Supernatural. Same. I have season 1. Tom, who will be brought up a bunch during this episode, lent me season 1 a long time ago, and I've never put it in because I know it's going to be one of those where I'm just going to get hooked, and I'm either going to do nothing but watch the show, or I'm just going to take forever to watch it. So, because this was a superhero show, I thought this would be the best one to do because it would maybe push me a little harder to watch. I'm trying to think. Reacher I watched, but even that took me a long. I waited till that whole thing came out, and I still took it like 1 episode a week. Other than that, I can't think of any other show that I've watched that isn't a Marvel show. Swamp Thing would probably be the last. Swamp Thing, Peacemaker, those are the 2. Anything comic I will watch. So let's see how we do with this. I'm really interested to see how far I get into this before I completely fall off and just stop watching. Again, it's a good show. It's just not for me. What else? If you saw my Instagram, this little guy that is above my desk, I'm going to go into a quick thing about this because I'm really happy about finding this. I am a big video game fan, obviously, based off past episodes and my trophy count. If you have me on PSN, back in the day, Tony Hawk Pro Skater was, I think we can all say, one of the best games ever. And everyone past that up until like Project 8, they were all amazing. I love that game. I love that series so much. I love skateboard culture. However, I can't skate. I can rollerblade like the best of them. I can't skateboard though. I do not have the coordination to do it. So I collected tech decks when I was a kid. I can say this now because the statute of limitations is passed. I stole tech decks from 7-Eleven when I was in middle school. There was a couple that I was able to pick to throw in my pocket because I just couldn't afford them when I was a kid. But I still have my collection of tech decks, and the one that I love, the company that I loved the most was World Industries. I loved Wet Willie and Flame Boy. I loved them so much that I used to draw them fighting each other in all of my notebooks. I drew hundreds of versions of them from what was on the skateboards to what was in my head. And I always wanted a skateboard, but the problem is boards are stupid expensive on their own. And because I don't skateboard, it's just going to be a wall piece. And I've always loved them. I never bought one though until I went to my local Canadian Tire and I was looking through the clearance section, and that bad boy was sitting in the clearance section because if you look at the photo that's on Instagram, there is a large crack on this side that goes right through Flame Boy, which when I squeezed it, I realized you cannot use this as a board because if you put a lot of weight on that back end, you're going to break it. So it was regular, I think $60 on for 17. And I went, you know what? I'm never going to find it cheaper. I'm never going to have an opportunity to own one. So I put the $17 down and I have it. And I love that it's sitting over my desk looking down at me because it's an inspiration of what I used to draw when I was a kid. And it still inspires me now because I love a lot of the skateboard art. So that's my little story about that. Last week's episode, I'm not going to do a full recap, but if you didn't see it, after you're done this, check out the Geeks and Co episode from last week. We had a lot of fun talking to them, finding out a little bit more about them. We're definitely going to have them on again, probably getting closer to March. We'll have them on to talk about Toronto Comic Con because they're going to probably have a booth. I'm probably going to be attending. We're going to talk about that, talk about their history with Comic Cons, which one they like, which one they don't, blah, blah, blah. We'll talk about that. But if you didn't see it, like I said, hop on over to that past video because we had a lot of fun talking, finding out a little bit more about them. They on their show, the Geeks & Co. Geek Boutique podcast, they talk a lot about cosplay and a lot about the cosplayers that are guest appearing on their show. We don't really find out a lot about the hosts. So that was the whole reason of having them on here. So it was great. Thank you to JS. Thank you to Messiah Complex Cosplay. And thank you to Rob the Bad Guy for appearing. We're definitely going to have some more guests. I've got another one I'm probably going to contact in the next day or two to see if he can come in for December. I want to try and maybe do one guest a month, depending on some ideas that I have. But yeah, we'll definitely be having a couple more guests on soon. Last little bit of news before we jump into the main story today. I had a bunch of fun at a little convention 2 weekends ago. We didn't talk about this last weekend because the Geeks & Co. folks were on the show, but I attended and I was asked to attend the MCX. Mississauga Public Library has their comic expo last Saturday, and I was invited to MC the cosplay red carpet, which was a lot of fun. I know one of the friends that I volunteer with, she works for the public library, and she was sort of getting this whole comic expo going. And she asked if I could come by and do a little MC. And I said, of course, I'd love to stop by. So it was really fun going there. Little tiny con, lots of stuff to do. That is one thing that I will say. They do this really well. London Toy Show does a pretty good job of this too. Having tons of vendors there is one thing, but if you just want to shop, that's one thing. But if you don't want to shop, there's nothing really to do besides walk around. This one had a little maker space where you can do stuff. I think they were printing buttons out of 3D printing. You can make masks. You could do a whole bunch of activities. They had a Super Smash Bros. Tournament going on. They had a Mario Kart tournament going on. They had a whole bunch of board games set up. They were teaching kids D&D. It was a really fun little con. So next year, when it comes around, I hopefully will know a little sooner and I can tell you guys all about it. But if you got little kids or you're young at heart, go check out the Mississauga Public Library and check out their comic expo next year because it was really cool seeing kids and even young adults having a lot of fun at a Comic-Con and not just shopping. There were some great vendors there, but I like having that little extra because, like I said, if you don't want to shop, there's nothing really to do. So that was really fun. I will definitely let you guys know about that next week. Now, let's jump into sponsorship, and then we are going to jump into the main event. Sponsor, as always, is my beautiful, loving, amazing wife. Thank you, hun. She is my sponsor every single week. If you're new here, hi, welcome. If you've been here before, she is my everything. I would not be doing this without her. I would not be the person I am without her. I would not be the man I am without her. She is always got my back on everything, and it means the world to me. Hun, I love you. You will always be my sponsor. Love you. All right. Let's jump into the main event. Let's talk about my time being a professional wrestler. If you've been watching this show since the beginning, thank you. If you may have seen me talk about this, you may go, I'm having a little bit of deja vu. Did we not talk about this before? Yes, we did do an episode a while back about this topic. However, it was one of my first episodes, and I wasn't sure how to get this whole audio visual thing working, and we actually had to mess up with the audio. So the audio on that episode is actual dog crap. So I took that down, and I'm doing a fresh one and a better one because there's actually a lot of things that I remembered after the episode was over. So we're going to go into a little more depth about what it was like training as a professional wrestler, why I did it, and some fun things that happened after the fact, because there is a fun story. So let's kick things off. How did I start being a professional wrestler? Well, a friend of mine, Tom, who was mentioned many times on this podcast, he used to live down on Barton Street, down off of Barton Street, not on Barton Street, off of Barton Street in Hamilton. And just down the street from him, less than a block away, there was a big warehouse type building, which I forget what they were doing. I think they were doing something to do with paper when I first met Tom. But the paper place moved out, and one of the local wrestling organizations rented the property and put their ring in there, and were doing shows. To help offset the shows, they did wrestling training. So you could pay a certain amount every month or every year, and you could come in a couple times a week, sometimes Saturday and Sunday, and you can train. And our trainer was Mr. Rip Impact. If you're a fan of the local indie wrestling market in Ontario, you know of Rip Impact. He's been doing this for decades. He's been all over the world. He's done dark matches for WWE, TNA, NWA, I think. He's been everywhere. He's an amazing guy, an amazing wrestler, and it was great training with him. The gym itself, so as you can envision, it was a really... Didn't mean to do that. It was a really big warehouse. Now, that's really good when it comes to wrestling, because it gives you a lot of space to put fans. It gives you a lot of... It makes the arena feel bigger. I know that some people don't like that open space. When I was training, I actually really enjoyed it, because I could envision fans being surrounding the ring and it being this big, huge arena. The problem with that is in the summer, it's boiling hot, and in the winter, it's freezing cold. So I personally trained for about a year. Tom started before I did, because back in those days, I wasn't somebody who wanted to take the initiative of doing something first. I usually waited for somebody to do it and then tell me if they liked it. Tom started, I want to say, 3-4 months before I did. And he was telling me how much fun it was. So I said, all right, I'm 20 something, let's say 22, 21. And I said, if I'm ever going to do this, now is it. So I put down my money and we started training. And it was... back in the day, you didn't really... back in the 2000s, which was, I'd say it's about 2004, 2005. You didn't really have much of... we didn't have the internet as much as we do now. We didn't have the references that we do now. So whenever you thought of what was it like to train to be a professional wrestler, the only thing you really had to go on was... WWE had a bunch of biographies out that talked about people training, like Mick Foley, Steve Austin, and all them training as indie wrestlers. And then you had Tough Enough, which was WWE's reality show, where they got a whole bunch of people who were doing... they were just normal people. None of them had really backgrounds, and they came in and they would train them, but not really. Like I said, it was more of a reality show. Anyways, that was the only reference we had. So it was really kind of, let's see what happens. So when we first started, we did a lot of basics, which I think everyone can expect when you start with wrestling. There was no way we were starting off with, let's do power bombs, because we're going to kill each other. The big thing that I really enjoyed was the workout. I'm not a workout guy. Can you tell? I'm not really a big workout guy. So, knowing weights and stuff like that, it was just never my thing. I never got into it. So going, well, I'm a wrestler. I'm going to need to make I'm going to have to build up a little bit. So let's do this type of workout. So the workouts we did were a lot of push-ups, a lot of sit-ups, a lot of squats. And then we had this thing called the tire flip. And the tire flip was I believe it was a tractor tire. And they had it laying there. And what we had to do was we had to get our fingers underneath the tire and flip it. Well, at the time, I was probably 170 pounds. there ain't no way I'm flipping this thing. But it was still really fun because it was one of the few things that I could actually see myself improving on. Because when I first tried it, I almost threw my back out. But I will admit, by the time we got to one of my last training, I came really close to flipping it. So I thought, you know what, after all this, I am gaining a little bit of muscle mass, strength, whatever you want to call it. But the training was really fun. Rip Impact as a trainer was amazing. Lot of rolls, lot of running the ropes. When this is something, I don't want to say I didn't have the respect for WWE and all those guys when I was that age. I knew based off what I'd seen, this was not going to be bouncing on a trampoline. And I'll tell you, it ain't. It is not bouncing on a trampoline. What the ring is made of, if you don't know, is there is a steel frame around it with some bars in the middle. There are 4x1s, I guess, slats laid on it. There is a little bit of foam and then a canvas over top of it. That's it. There's no spring. There's none of that. So when you hit and you do what's called a back bump where you fall back, you're just basically hitting wood and steel. So it was weird because I actually really enjoyed taking bumps. When you first start out, you're just going to do a flat back bump. So you're just going to fall back, throw your feet up, bang. Key thing, tuck your chin because you don't want to hit the back of your head on it. We'll talk more about that later. Just flat back bump. Then you get into things like doing a flip bump where you would have someone on all fours. You would go to the side of them, press off them, do a flip over, slam on your back. I really enjoyed it. It hurt like a mother, but it still was kind of fun because you're wrestling. Like, this is still pretty fun. Running the ropes, same thing. It's rope. Like, I think that's another thing that people think, like, oh, well, it's got to be some bungee cord. No, it's rope with duct tape on it. Like, it's not fancy. And it's not like that was just the indie world and WWE does it different. No. It's rope there too. It's the same thing. So, but it was fun. I came home with welts on my arms and my back. But it's still so much fun because I'm doing the thing that I watched on TV. And obviously, I don't have 10,000 people cheering me on while I'm doing it. But it's a step in the direction of being a pro wrestler. Like, this is how wrestlers start. So it was really, really fun. The trainees that came along too, there were definitely some itchy nose. There was definitely some that you could see had a lot of potential. There are some that are currently in the Ontario indie scene. Scotty O'Shea, Alex York were there. I'm trying to think of who else. There was a few others that moved up and are still in the indie scene. You would have people come in every now and then. If there was another promotion in the city, they would come in. The cast of characters that we had on our sort of regular squad was, pretty normal people trying to get their foot in the door, trying to learn. Two people, however, which you might know if you're a wrestling fan right now, were training with us occasionally and were starting their careers. And that was All Ego Ethan Page from AEW. And I'm not 100% if he's still the current Impact champion or former Impact champion. Josh Alexander was also a trainee / starting his wrestling career when we were training. So it was really cool seeing them because I remember seeing Ethan Page back in early 2000s, early to mid 2000s. And even at that point, I'm sitting there going, this guy's got something. And I think he'd been wrestling for a little while by that point. And I just knew he needed that break. And when I heard he got signed to Impact along with Josh Alexander, the exact same, I knew there was something in there that was going to get them a break that they deserved. And seeing Ethan Page now, AEW Ring of Honor, doing amazing. He's so good. And then you've got Josh Alexander, who's killing it over in Impact. I think both of them have great careers ahead of them, and it's really cool to know that I know them from back in the day. I'm currently wearing my all ego Ethan Page pants that I've picked up from Value Village. I have, when they closed the gym down, there was an individual staying there, and he just kind of left his stuff, so we had to pile it up. And in his stuff, there was a whole bunch of 8x10s, and one of them was Josh Alexander, his first 8x10, Jay Phoenix back in the day. And I have a couple of those that are autographed from him. So it's really cool to know that I knew them back in the day. Whether, I don't know them well enough that if I ran into them at a show, I would be like, hey, and they'd know me. But it's still pretty cool. When it came to the training, we really didn't do a ton when it came to, I don't think there'd be a lot of character work when it came to what we were training. Justin Smith in chat, how badly do you think Punk will trash AEW tonight? I don't think he's going to trash AEW at all. If WWE has it their way, he ain't going to say anything. I'd say he's probably going to say the exact same thing that Cody did, where he might make a reference to it, but he's not going to slam them, because that would be the first place team making fun of the second place team. There's no reason for it. There's absolutely no reason for it. Like I said, I think he might do something where he might talk about, he might say something about how he was somewhere else and how someone might have been scared for their lives or something like that. But I think that's about it. I don't think they're going to talk much about it. And yes, legally, he can't say too much. Very true. The last thing WWE wants to deal right now is deal with any legal issues. As I was saying, I don't think there wasn't much when it came to character or anything like that. We really didn't get into much of that, because that was something you get when you're actually going to start performing at shows. But of course, when you're sitting there, you have ideas of like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And my idea, which was shot down instantly, because Rip Impact said, it doesn't have a three beat name, and he was really pushing that. So my name is Michael. So my thought was, it'd be really cool, do the Archangel Michael. And I was going to, it's funny, it's actually sort of what I kind of had this envision before I even knew what it was, or I had this vision not even thinking of what the character was, because this is actually a perfect example of what it was going to look like. I was honestly going to do something like Sephiroth from Final Fantasy, where I would have that look, and I would do my finisher, which was probably going to be possibly the Side Effect by Matt Hardy. And I was going to get a Sharpie, and I was going to write Sinner on them, sort of like the NWO spray paint. And that was going to be my gimmick. And as always, when it came to what I cared about the most was my entrance music, because for some reason my audio brain kicks in it has to be perfect entrance music. And what it was going to be was, it was going to be the Trans-Siberian Orchestra does a version of Requiem the Fifth, which is such a good song. And I had it all planned out. I told Rip Impact about it, and Rip just goes, nope, doesn't have a 3-beat. Michael the Archangel just doesn't flow. So, not that I ever had a match in front of anybody, but that was going to be my gimmick. We did have one match, though. I did have one official match, and I say official as in it was going to be it was in front of just the students, and it was Tom and I, because I said, if I'm going to have a match, I better have it against my buddy. And it was really fun. Like, I still remember it like it was yesterday. I have so many people tell me how nice of a guy I am. I'm not tooting my own horn, but a few people have told me that. But when it comes to being a wrestler, I just wanted to be a villain. I wanted to be heel so bad. So in the match, I worked heel and Tom worked babyface, which was so funny because if you met us, Tom's got a temper at times, and I'm cool, calm, and collected. But when we're in the ring, we do the complete opposite. Yeah, we had so much fun. It wasn't a long match. It was probably like 5-10 minutes at most. And we ended it with Tom was using the spear as his finisher, and I was in the corner. He was sort of setting up like Goldberg, and he comes running towards me for a spear. I leapfrog over him, and I do the smarter than the average bear, and I turn around and he hits me with it. And he hits me well enough that I don't just hit flat, I hit on my shoulders and do a back roll, so it looks worse than it is. And he pins me. The other student who was ref comes in, counts to 3, and I just lay there dead. And I remember a couple people coming over checking on me thinking I was hurt, and I was like, nope, I'm just selling because that's what I'm supposed to do as a heel. And everyone was pretty happy with that, and I had a lot of fun. I really wish I had a second match, but just with the way everything worked out, it didn't really happen. I know Tom had a few other matches. He actually had a match in front of people, which we'll talk about in a bit. But yeah, I only got to have one match, which I wish it was more, but then on the other hand, I don't. The main reason why I didn't have another match was because it wasn't long after that I ended up leaving. The reason I ended up leaving, I don't want to get into too much detail, but there was some issues with some students, some fellow students that I fully admit I could have handled better, and I think they will admit they could have handled better. Like I said, I was coming home pretty banged up because it's wrestling. Like, you're never gonna not be hurt. And my girlfriend at the time was not too pleased with it. And there was someone who was training with us who, I don't want to say took liberties, but tried to show that they were tougher than the rest of us and laid in a little harder than I feel like they should. And they may have left a bruise or two, and my girlfriend went nuts and freaked out over it and started, Facebook messaging them and blah, blah, blah. And it really shouldn't have gone that far, but it did. And then I just didn't want to deal with it. Like, there was drama that was starting, and I just did not want to deal with the drama. Plus, this was drama that was costing me money because, like I said, you're paying to train. So the I can't even remember exactly how much the cost was, but the cost was about, did you give him a receipt? I did not give him a receipt because I'm not that person. I'm not the person. The person who was doing some things, they knew a lot of the wrestlers. They knew Rip. They were close to all of them. So I was sort of the newbie. So I really didn't have I didn't really have the authority to do anything like that. So I just walked away. I really enjoyed the training. I enjoyed having matches, but I started to think about, was this something I was going to do for a profession? There was a lot of people coming in that were on the indie scene, and they were struggling. The indie scene back then is not the indie wrestling scene that is now. Now, with the internet being as good as it is, and it's so easy to film these things and put them on YouTube or some other platform. It was a struggle back then for a lot of them. And I just was thinking, do I really want to do this? I was in a relationship at the time. She would not have let me leave and be gone for weekends and weekends and weekends. So I just made the decision. It's costing me too much. I don't see this as a profession that I'm actually going to follow through with. I'm just going to take off. I'm just going to go back to being a fan. And, like I said, it sucked, but I knew it was the right thing. I also have a bad neck. If you guys tune into a past episode, I can't remember which one, but I did bring up when I want to say in my teens, I can't remember how old exactly. I was cleaning some snow off my mom's roof. She has a back end of her house has a roof that's about 10 feet tall. I was cleaning some snow off of it, and I decided to do a swanton off that into a big pile of snow, which went great. And then I went up and did it again, and I did it into the exact same spot. And the snow was compacted, and I landed on my butt and jacked my neck and back all to hell. And I'm still paying for it today. Posture's probably not helping. But I knew, there was a couple times where I was taking bumps and it was hurting, and I'm like, it shouldn't hurt this much. And it was sore some mornings more than I thought it should. So I know, like, if I take a wrong bump or somebody doesn't hold me the wrong way and I fall on my head, like, dude, I don't want to be that story, especially, being an indie wrestler. So yeah, I ended up walking away. Tom, however, did stick around a little longer. And actually, before we get into that, we did have one really fun night, and it was family and friends night, where we as the students could bring a family or friend, and they could do one night of wrestling training with us. And that was really cool because there's a lot of people who brought like their dad or little brother or something like that. Tom brought his wife, and I love Tom. I love Krista. I hope you guys are watching. You guys are great. You know how much I love you. Krista, however, does not know how to tuck her chin. She did by the end. And the way she learned was every time she took a back bump, the back of her head just smacked off the ring. And it looked so painful. She must have rang her bell 5-6 times in one night. And it was so bad to watch. But by the end, she ended up doing it. And she did a good job, but I will always remember that, and just seeing every time smacking her head going, just duct tape your chin to your chest, please. Tom and I were getting a little grossed out by it. Like, Tom's got a problem of having concussions, and I'm like, please don't have your wife have the same problem too, just from one night of wrestling. But yeah, that was a fun night. It wasn't long after I left, though, that the gym actually got shut down. There was a bunch of different indie promotions in the area, and one of them came in, and I remember going to the show, and I remember I somehow knew this would be the last show at the gym. I don't know how I knew this, but I just knew it. And, you go to these shows every month, you just kind of, whatever, it's another show. But this one, I was like, I'm going to hold on to my ticket stub. There's something telling me to, and I still have it over in that board behind me. I walk in, and there's a guy, one of the doors could open on the side. It was like it was sort of looked like one of the garage doors. And there was a guy parked there with a grilling hot dogs and selling hot dogs. And that kind of caught my eye. Not that I like hot dogs, but just kind of like, that's different. Anyways, went on with my day. Well, a couple weeks later, I find out the gym's shutting down. And I asked why. And they said, well, it's because they didn't have a food license to sell hot dogs. And I guess someone called the city, and the whole gym has to be shut down because they broke a law, and it was going to cost them a whole bunch of money to stay open to fight this thing. And they ended up closing down. And I even remember there was a meeting we had with two of the individuals who own the promotion, and they were saying, we're looking for people to invest. And this is one of the saddest moments that I've ever had. And I don't mean sad as emotional, sad as in stupid. This was me being young and stupid. They said, if you want to put in some money, you can be co-owner of this indie promotion. And it was something like a couple grand to be a part of it. And I remember going to my dad and begging him to be a part of this. Like, please lend me the money. I want to be a promoter. And it was so stupid and sad. And I'll fully admit that it was dumb for me to even ask, but I was young and stupid. And he said no. Thank God he said no, because really, it would mean nothing if I bought that. Like, okay, so I'm a part of it. Now what? Like, it means nothing to be a part of it. But yeah, that was the thing, was you could, if they found somebody that was going to pitch in a couple grand, they could possibly stay open, but nothing happened. No one wanted to do it. So they ended up closing the gym, and we ended up tearing down they built a wall and that led in the back area. We tore the wall down. We grabbed all the stuff. We threw it in a big U-Haul, and we actually moved the gym, I want to say 7-8 blocks away. And what was a huge building, which was really cool, they moved into this place that was about the size of this room. It was tiny. Honestly, you could get one little walkway on either side of the ring, and you had maybe 3 rows of fans on either side. It was a tiny little storage facility that they had rented. And I knew when we brought everything in there, I went, there's no way this is going to work. There's no way I want anything to do with this. And however, Tom, Tom did, Tom decided he wanted to stick around and he wanted to do some more wrestling. And he actually got booked on 2 shows, I believe. I really wish somebody had videotaped it. This was not the age of everybody having cell phone cameras, so you actually had to get a video camera to videotape these things. And this is the funny story from after he had one good match from what I remember, and then the night of his second show, I was with my girlfriend and we were at a family gathering that I couldn't get out of because I really did want to see his match, but I couldn't get out of it. And we were, I don't know, it was probably an hour into when the show had started, and I get a call, and it's Tom. And he goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "Nothing. I'm at this family gathering. What are you up to?" He said, "Nothing. The show's just wrapping up." I said, "Oh, good. How'd it go?" He goes, "Good." He goes, "I got busted open though." And I'm like, "Oh, you all right?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm fine." He goes, "What are you doing tonight?" I said, "Nothing." I said, "Girlfriend's going home. I'm going home. Why? What do you need?" He goes, "Well, I'm going to come by." I said, "Okay, what are you going to, any reason?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm going to rent a couple movies. We're going to stay up all night and watch movies." I said, "All right, random. Why are we staying up all night to watch movies?" He goes, "Because I have a really bad concussion and I need to stay awake all night." I said, "What the hell happened?" He goes, "I'll tell you later." So what ended up happening was Tom lost a headbutt. Tom went into the match with with one of the wrestlers who actually trained with us a little bit. And the guy he was wrestling was a lot bigger. And he threw a headbutt. And Tom didn't zig when he should have zagged. And he just hit him square in the head and knocked him out cold. I think that also split him open. So that was the last match I think Tom had. I think Tom's wife, Krista, said, "You're not getting busted open every weekend and you're not getting concussions every weekend. You have a hard enough time dealing with concussions on a normal basis, let alone, deliberately going into something that is going to bust you open and knock you out every other weekend." But yeah, it turned into, there was stuff like that had happened. They went way more hardcore. The guy that was running the company now was wanting to do a lot more, ECW, ZZW, stuff like that. If you've ever seen the super hardcore stuff online, a lot of barbed wire baseball bats and glass and stuff like that. And that's just, it's not something I'm into. I've really realized over the past few years that is a style of wrestling that I was really into as a teen and really into as a 20-year-old, but I just do not have the patience for it anymore. I remember the after everything that gym closed down, the thing that came out of that was the biggest local indie promotion, and that was Alpha One, which is going to be coming back shortly. I was going to many of their shows, and there was one that I missed, and they had a really big bloodbath match that they just were gushing by the end. And I remember Tom talking about it later, and I said, honestly, I probably would have walked out because it's just not the type of wrestling I want to watch anymore. I think based off what we've learned when it comes to concussions and, you know, just what these guys have to go through after the matches and after their career's over, it's just not something I want to, be a part of. But that's how the company turned into that was in the new gym. It was so bloody. And every time I saw clips of them, it was just them beating each other bloody senseless by the end. It just wasn't for me. So that was it for my professional wrestling. The training, like I said, was really fun. I love just going in there on Saturdays and Sundays. Tom and I, because Tom lives so close, I would meet him up and we would go to the gym and it would honestly be us. We would sit there and we would start practicing drop kicks, and we would do all these weird tilt-a-whirl moves. It was so much fun doing that stuff, just the two of us, especially with Rip Impact, because he was so good at those type of things. We never really did any high-flying stuff, which was probably for the best. We did a couple nights we did crash mats and we were doing high-flying stuff. So I was doing 5-star frog splashes and swantons off the top rope, but I remember we went from the crash mat to the thin mats, like the gym mats. And I remember hitting a swanton on that. And I was like, okay, I don't want to go any further because I can just imagine what this feels like to land and to be the person catching underneath. So we really didn't do that. Justin Smith in chat says, I was really into hardcore wrestling when I was younger, but I'm like Cornette, no, and loathe hardcore wrestling. I totally agree. I am a Jim Cornette fan as well. I've been a fan of his for many, many years. The Outlaw Mud Show is something I use on a regular basis because it's it's got its place and it's got its fan bases. It was definitely something that was once a big thing. ECW made it very mainstream, and there are those fans. But I think when I don't want to get into more of AEW and what they're doing now, but I think when they try and bring it to the masses, having people like Nick Gage and, even the stuff with what happened, I think, a couple weeks ago at Full Gear with people using staple guns and stuff, with our Hangman Page doing staple guns and stuff. It wasn't for me. I just think it's not worth it. Alex in chat says, I have a younger brother. He was my wrestling dummy. Piper was my fave. I didn't have a younger brother. I had a wrestling dummy. I think I mentioned it before. I went to the States when I was a little kid and I picked up, it wasn't the Wrestling Buddies like everyone remembers. It was like a good 3-foot plush Kevin Nash that I used as a wrestling dummy. And when it's 3 foot and you're a kid and you're only 5 foot, that's pretty close to being life size. So I remember beating the living daylights out of that thing. I didn't have any younger brothers. Piper was my fave. Who doesn't love Piper? But yeah, it was fun doing the wrestling training. The gym has moved a couple times since then. I think Tom has kept in contact with Rip Impact. Anytime I see him, I give him a wave and say hi. There's been a couple times I've thought about maybe going back. I know when we were getting ready to do my bachelor party for the wedding, I was contemplating, messaging Rip and saying, can we do just like a bump day and like run the ropes and do just like have all the groomsmen get together in the wrestling ring? But I knew one of two things was going to happen. Either I was going to land the wrong way and hurt myself and then I'd not hear the end of it, or I was going to enjoy it so much that I was going to get frustrated that I couldn't do it anymore. And I'm like, there's no win of doing this. So we ended up bailing on it. And I think, Tom and I have had that discussion many times. I know Tom has that itch a little bit of what maybe going back, but he's got 2 kids, he's got a family. There's no way we're going to be, what's the end goal? Like, you're going to do training and, the chance of an injury is high, and there's no way you're going to be doing this professional because we're both 35. We're way past our prime. So I don't think we're either of us is ever going to step into a ring again. And if it is, it would be a very, very, very small basis. But yeah, I can't say it wasn't a bad thing. It really did. The one thing I did learn from it was when it came to working out, even just doing the basics of push-ups, sit-ups, squats, stuff like that, it works. For those who don't know, my mom is a former fitness trainer, so I grew up with weights and machines in my basement, and I never wanted to touch them. A, because they were mom's things, and you don't touch mom's things because it could break, but also it just looked like work to me, and I didn't want to do that. And I thought of, well, if I'm going to work out, I'm going to have to work out for hours on end. Well, no, like you can just do a little bit every day and it will work. You don't have to do, 2 hours every single night if it's not for you. But yeah, I enjoyed that. I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I met the people that I did. Like I said, there was superstars coming in every now and then. Colin Delaney, if you remember him from the WWE's ECW, he came in a couple times, so it was cool meeting him. And yeah, it was a fun time that, like I said, lasted a year, but there's no way I would ever go back. And like I said, coming out of that was Alpha One, and Alpha One is probably the biggest company in the area. They shut down because of the pandemic. They had a couple shows post-pandemic, but now they're coming back. They're going to be back in the Ontario area in February. I think they have a February show, a March show, and an April show. So it's good to see them back running again, because it was really fun going to their shows and seeing, just the indie scene. They have guests come in every now and then. Cody Rhodes was at Alpha One for a while. He was a champion for a while. Dave Arquette came in at one point. So it was really cool seeing those indie shows. And I wish, if it wasn't for the gym falling apart, we wouldn't have Alpha One, but I wish Alpha One came out of that while we were training, because I think that would have been really cool to be a part of it. But yeah, that was my time as an indie wrestler. It was pretty cool. It was pretty cool, but I will not be taking any more bumps because wife will not let me. And you know what? That is not something I'll ever try and fight, because she is totally right on that. Because if I screw my neck up or something, I'm just going to regret it. So safety first. But that is it for the night, folks. I hope you enjoyed me talking about that. I'm trying to think of what's going to happen next week. I got a couple ideas of what I'm going to do next week. I think next week we're going to go into a comic book episode. Haven't really talked a lot about comic books. What I'm going to talk about is we're going to talk about the New 52. That was the moment where I had given up on comics and I really wasn't caring about comics. But then when that New 52 came out, it was the beginning of a new version of what was happening in the DC universe. And that was when I got back into it. Tom got back into it. And that's when the comic collection started. And it ran for a while. There was weeks where we were going every single week to get comics. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about my thoughts about it. Was it overkill? Has DC kind of done this rebirth thing 1,000 times and I'm tired of it? We're going to talk about all about that and a whole lot more. Thank you all for joining, and we'll see you all next week. Have a good week, and stay nerdy, folks. See you guys later. See ya. Hey, thanks for watching Monday Night Nerd. If you enjoyed this content, please hit the subscribe button, like this content, and follow on social media for even more nerdy fun. See you soon.